Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, the third movement, the trio, is a very standard orchestral excerpt that we will see a lot for auditions for anything from music schools to professional orchestras. So it's something that we should all be very familiar with. And so let's get started. Like I do with a lot of videos that have orchestral excerpts, I have a PDF somewhere, or I've included the music in the video itself with fingerings. And you'll notice that the fingerings do not use any open G strings. And I don't have a problem with open G strings myself. It's just that there are enough people out there that it's a deal breaker for them if they hear an open G string. In fact, for some people on audition committees, that might be all that they listen for. So let's give those people something else to listen for besides the dreaded open G string. So play all your G strings as stopped strings on the D string. That way no one has anything to complain about. And if you can do the same thing with your D by playing it stopped on the A string, great, especially on the quarter notes. Hey, let's talk about the quarter notes. How long should those be? A lot of people will have a lot of varying opinions on this. The one thing that everyone can agree on is you don't play it legato. So somewhere around there, but not too short, never pecky. And you'll notice that I like to vibrate my half notes. If you can sneak in a little bit of vibrato on the half notes, it adds a little bit of excitement to your excerpt, and you always want to differentiate yourself any way you can. If you can stick in a vibrato, go ahead and do so, especially if you choose to play the excerpt with one of the slower tempos. And you can definitely take advantage of the slower tempo by playing a vibrato on all of the half notes. Another thing that I'd like to give as a hint, this particular excerpt that I have actually starts at measure 137, where it's piano. This is actually a great place to start the excerpt because it tests the bass player on their ability to play soft versus loud, as well as maintaining the tempo from the softer dynamics to the louder dynamics. I have a little trick that I do for this that I want to show you in case you have to do this. And in this particular NMEA excerpt, you'll have to do exactly this. First of all, for the piano section, commit to putting the bow closer to the fingerboard or even over the fingerboard. And then bounce it a little bit, like that. You'll notice that there are even dots over those quarter notes in piano, but there are no dots over the quarter notes in the forte section. So a lot of people play these really off the string for the style, but also in order to really get a nice piano. So please do that. When you do it a little bit closer to the fingerboard and off the string, and then follow that with moving the bow about half an inch or an inch closer to the bridge for the forte section on the C, it makes for a really nice contrast. Now, the next thing I need to point out is the second ending. Skip to the second ending. Don't bother playing the first ending, even if it isn't indicated in there to take the first ending. The audition committee will always appreciate it if you take the second ending because they have too many people to listen to. Next thing, I think that we need to get into what really makes this excerpt difficult. The reason that it's asked at auditions is audition committees want to see if you can play with clarity. I mean, this is in addition to playing with good rhythm, good dynamic contrast, keeping the same pulse, and playing in tune. But this particular excerpt tests the ability of the bass player to do what is really hard to do on the bass, but is necessary to do on the bass when you play in an orchestra. And that's play with clarity on the lower strings. So let's talk about that. And I'm going to demonstrate from a different point of view. Now, the first thing that you will notice about this bow not just this bow, but all bows have a resiliency to it. Even the inexpensive bows will bounce up and down like so. There's a lot of energy wound up in that stick, and you need to leverage it. Don't ever muscle up to get the stroke. The fingers go back and forth. And the stick just bounces on its own. The stick doesn't actually leave the string. The hair doesn't actually leave the string. What happens is that the weight is released, and when the weight is released, even though the hair doesn't actually physically leave the string, the release of the weight allows for more oscillation, and that's what creates this stroke that everyone covets. It's something that you have to let the bow do for you. Again, it's this motion. Only going in very, very fast motion. So I could really talk it to death right now and go into the acoustics of it and talk about the physical modeling, but I really think that the best way to approach this is to simply relax your arm, let the bow do the work, and rub the bow back and forth and let the bow's resiliency push the weight of the bow away from the string so that the string can breathe and give it the clarity that everyone looks for at these auditions. I know a lot has been said about making sure that you don't use too much rosin, and that's very, very true for most things. But when it comes to this excerpt, if your strings are simply not being grabbed by the bow, you really don't have much of a choice. Put more rosin on there. And only until when you realize the string is sticking so much to the hair of the bow that it's not really breathing and you don't get the stroke, that's when you need to lay off on the rosin. But err on the side of using too much rosin on this trio, because if the hair is not grabbing the string, you have no chance. So you might as well just cake it on, find the amount that you need. When you're done with the excerpt, wipe that excess rosin off with a rag, because you don't want all that rosin for the next excerpt, especially if you have something like the Bach violin concerto afterwards. Another little hint for you is making sure that the arc, that you have economy of motion when you change strings. So you don't want to do that. Don't do that. Just as much motion as you need to cross strings. So, one last hint is the reason I ask people to do this little exercise related to the economy of motion. I want people to get used to the idea of their first finger getting quickly enough to the lower string in order to, because a lot of times the low G does not speak because the first finger does not get over to the lower string quickly enough. So you do this little exercise to get used to the idea of your first finger getting over to the low G. That's about all I have to say about this excerpt. I know that if everyone out there had contributed everything that they've ever learned about this excerpt to a book compilation, I would have to make a book about this thick, probably bigger. I'm not joking, because this is one of the most studied excerpts out there, and I'm sure a lot of people have stuff to say. So please say it in the comments. This is a great discussion point, and one of the things that motivates me about making this particular video is that I was contacted last year by someone out in California who wanted to know after watching one of my videos if I had a video or could make a video for this particular excerpt, the trio from Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. And I just didn't feel like it at the time, so I decided to look for one for the person. And curiously enough, there wasn't one. There wasn't any tutorial. So unless something has changed since I last heard from this person, let's make more of these. So I'm looking forward to what you have to say about the Beethoven, and maybe I can learn something from you. Thanks for watching. See you later.